Welcome to the Port City Plate Podcast, presented by Bienville Bikes Food Tour. The Port City Plate Podcast, serving up the food, history, and people of Mobile, Alabama, for people who love the Port City. I'm your host, Chris Andrews, and what an exciting episode that we've got lined up for you today. We've got David Rasp. He is a titan in the Mobile food scene, owner and operator of two of Mobile's most well-known and popular restaurants, Heroes Sports Bar and Grille and the Royal Scam. David started Heroes in 1998, so they're celebrating their 25th year in Mobile. Incredible achievement in Mobile's food scene. Didn't stop there, though. In 2006, he opened up the Royal Scam on Royal Street, serving up some of the best dishes in Mobile, and I'm just really excited about today's episode. David, welcome to the Port City Plate Podcast.
Thank you so much. I've been a fan and listener thus far, so it's a treat to get together and talk with you in person about it.
I'm excited too. So congratulations on 25 years being a restaurant owner in Mobile. I know that's a huge accomplishment. How does it feel to reach that sort of accomplishment?
It's interesting because certainly when you first start, you're not thinking 5 years in advance, most typically, at least if you're a first-time operator, as I was, okay? When you mortgage your house to start a restaurant, you're not thinking, how are we going to celebrate our 5th or our 10th, much less our 25th anniversary. Your goal when you mortgage your house to open a restaurant is to not be homeless. So, it is kind of surreal to think 25 years. You know, I look in the mirror, there is a little more gray.
Oh, yeah.
I don't blame all that on the employees, but certainly they get their share of the blame. So.
All right, so I got to know the story. You mortgage your house to start a restaurant, so tell me the story of how
it seemed like a very reasonable thing to do.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Everybody told me it was a smart, but bankers, the accountants, everyone said, that's the way you do this, David. It is interesting. It is you think in terms of sort of buying your favorite bar, so to speak. So the early history of Heroes Sports Bar was influenced by something that preceded it at that location from 93 to 97 called Big Kahuna Sports Bar. And I loved that place, and they closed, and there was a different operator. Hennessy's came in briefly, and then we came in November 6, 1998, we opened up. So it was, there wasn't a lot of time to really think even. We signed, as I mentioned, we signed the paperwork on November the 1st, opened up on November the 6th. So it was a quick turnaround, and wow, the time has flown.
So you had no restaurant experience at that point? That is correct. What were you doing at that time?
At that time, I was actually working for local radio stations, 92 Zoo and you'll have to cut this, 92 Zoo and Oldies 106.5.
Okay, yeah, I remember Oldies 106.
The Zoo was under different ownership than its current group. The current group now, of course, is 92 Zoo and WNSP, as well as the Crab and some other things. So local, primarily local independent, radio advertising sales.
Okay, interesting. So that's why you have such a good voice for this podcast, right?
Well, I learned. I was my client list, as it were, consisted of a lot of bar and restaurant type folks. So I really was, I guess, in a way, doing some research and learning a little more about the industry at that time. But certainly not what you'd like to learn going in. But we went for it. So.
I'm curious, looking back 25 years, and when you walk in Heroes now, you've got flat screen TVs. All over the wall, right? And I hate to sound like a young buck when I ask you this question, but what was the TV experience like in 1998 at Heroes?
Okay, when we first opened, so now we have at the downtown location 18 televisions. I guess 10 or 11 of those, 12 of those are probably 65 inch, and then the other ones are 50 inch. But when we started in 1998, I think that facility held 6 televisions total, 1 in the back area and 5 up in the bar area. They were basically 25, 26 inch.
Okay, the tube TVs,
right? That's correct.
Yeah.
And then I remember we switched to a Sony 27 inch, which they called a flat screen because the screen was not concave, it was a flat surface, but the unit itself was anything but flat. It was like a Pontiac. It was made of steel and glass. It was unbelievably heavy. And so we thought that was, in fact, making forward progress at the time. But then I remember jumping to 40 inch and 50 inch. And so we've tried to pretty much create almost a wall from one side all the way to the other. So you continue to work on that as the technology gets better.
Right.
You know?
And I don't think we can get any bigger than where we're at now, can we? I mean, 72 and 65. I mean,
if you have room for it, you can get bigger. They now have some models where it's sort of designed to be grouped together. So they're making the borders quite thin, so you could take maybe 4 50 or 65-inch TVs, put them together, and then you'd have the little line down the middle. But yeah, there are. It continues to evolve.
Yep, and it will. So. Yep. So I guess, owning a sports bar, I'm sure in the state of Alabama can probably be a lucrative business during football season. I mean, especially the last 15 years. We'll say 20 years just for the Auburn fans. But when the state of Alabama's pretty much been the epicenter of college football, especially. So talk a little bit about that and how that business has gone for you, especially during football season.
Well, as we know, college football down here is somewhat of a religion. People are. Boy, the passion for that is incredible, and there's activity and interest level when the teams are doing well and competing for SEC championships, for example, or national championships. And then, of course, the flip side of that coin is the interest level when things aren't going so well. Do we have to, fire a coach is the common thing these days. So it's really, it's interesting. And in our fan base, maybe at one time was a lot of Alabama fans, of course, because of the success they've had with that program, but it's really more across the board now, not just Alabama and Auburn, but certainly our local hometown team, USA Jags. We show those games.
Yep.
In our West Mobile location, we show all of them. In the downtown location, we show as many of them as we can. We stream in West Mobile to get a few more, but there's plenty of LSU fans in the area, Georgia. I mean, SEC is the dominant in terms of our customer base, but there are plenty of folks that are here from other, we get folks that move down, Big Ten countries.
Yeah.
So we do
they
have
want to watch Wisconsin or something, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Ohio State, Michigan fans and Michigan State, we've got them. So it's really, we're a part of the country where a lot of folks have moved to from many other places. So it's a gumbo, if you will.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. And I guess, too, I would think pretty interesting about owning a sports bar. Of course, we can all get on Twitter right now and hear and see what everybody's thoughts are on college football and stuff, but you kind of get that in real time. People's thoughts on their team or their coach or, I just think that would be really, really neat to, you're probably seeing, when breaking news comes across the screen, you're there and you get to see people's instant reaction to some of those kind of stories and stuff like that. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I mean, I just remember weird moments in history when I guess there was an injury on the 49ers and Colin Kaepernick got his first start at the very beginning of his career. And, certainly he's a huge name for reasons that have to do with football and non-football, but, it's strange. I mean, we outlasted, if you will, Tom Brady's career. So that's a milestone. Forget 25 years. We were there before Tom Brady, and we're still here after. That guy stayed around quite a while. So
that's an achievement right there.
Mm-hmm.
And then here locally, we've got so many baseball Hall of Famers that are from Mobile, and we've got the unique event, the Senior Bowl that occurs here every year, and we've got that 1 week of the year where every NFL scout and owner and general manager, they all bombard our city for an entire week. I don't think a lot of people really realize what that does for our city's economy. Like having these prominent people that are walking our streets, downtown Mobile. How has that had an impact on what you do?
It's terrific. And, for the average citizen who doesn't think about things in those terms, if they know anybody that works for one of the local hotels, especially the downtown area hotels, they will tell you that is a huge week. In terms of the revenue and the occupancy, of course, but let's face it, the status of that. Mobile should be very proud to host that event. So it's a neat thing that time of year, there's a lot of credit cards getting used that have NFL logos on them.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we've been fortunate to have a lot of those guys in over the years, and I know a lot of the bars and restaurants that look forward to it, but certainly the hotel operators, that's a great week for Mobile in many ways.
Yeah. What about some celebrity sightings that you've seen that week? Can you think what's some NFL, some prominent places, people that have come into your place?
We've had a lot of former players. We've had some coaches. Gosh, I'm kind of drawing a blank on some of the coaches we've had now. John Gruden, of course, Bill Cowher from back in the days. I'm showing my age now. Bill Cowher, at the time he was coach of the Steelers. Now he's a commentator on Fox Sports. Super nice guy. Gruden, great guy. It's almost too many to count as it relates to that week. They're all in and out. We had non-Super Bowl week. Maybe our biggest sort of celebrity sighting was probably Jerry Rice came to Heroes on like a Tuesday night. He had a Stella Artois and a black and blue burger with fries. And this was maybe 10 years or so ago. The guy looked like he could still play.
Yeah.
And the trick is that he didn't eat all those fries.
That's it.
He looked great. He was a super nice guy. It was just a quiet night. I think he was doing some program where he was supporting either small colleges, maybe HBCU, or maybe even high school related. He had some program going on, and they were filming and doing something. So he just popped into a sports bar that was fairly slow that night. Sat at the bar. Next thing I know, my bartender sent me a text. Hey, Jerry Rice is here. And of course, my response was, the Jerry Rice. And while I typically avoid being a fanboy around these guys, I really like to let them enjoy their stay when it's someone of a certain status. I had to go sit by Jerry Rice and talk to him because he's Jerry Rice.
That's right. You got to do that.
Arguably the greatest receiver, arguably the greatest football player of all time. So it's pretty incredible. So that one maybe stands out the most.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And yes, he was wearing one of his Super Bowl rings.
So I know we talked a little bit about Alabama and Auburn and downtown, but you mentioned earlier you got the Hero Sports Bar also out there at USA, and the campus South Alabama, just right across the street from Hancock Whitney Stadium. Talk about kind of what your decision to open up in that location and what that location has been doing.
Well, that is our top of my 3 restaurants. That is our top sales store.
Okay.
Now, it has the largest occupancy. It certainly benefits from the proximity to the university. It's not as much geared towards the student body as much as all the support staff, administration, teachers, alumni. There's just a lot of great neighborhoods out there. So I guess the flow of business as compared to downtown, even though we're thankful that we have a strong lunch business that's kind of returned post-COVID and been really strong. But I would say downtown still is very impacted by event-oriented things, and West Mobile for us, despite the proximity to the stadium and the university, it's really neighborhood-driven out there. We've got an outside play area, and the folks out there love to let the kids run around and enjoy that. Where the logistics of downtown does not permit such, or they'll take your children away from you if you let them play in the street like that.
Yep.
So it's really been great.
It is a great family-friendly restaurant.
And of course, from a decor standpoint. That store focuses strongly on the university, whereas the downtown store focuses strongly on local. If you walk through and you want to see, Hank Aaron and everybody from Ozzie Smith to, it's almost exclusively local, specific to Mobile. There's a few. We put Bo Jackson in there because he's Bo Jackson. At least he's in the state. He's kind of in the neighborhood. And the owner seems to have an unhealthy relationship with the Boston Celtics. So if you go in the stores, you might see a Bird Parish McHale poster or something like that. But normally, those 2 stores have a different theme. The one, again, South Alabama is by the university, and the downtown one, all local.
Yeah, okay, I like that. I want to talk about some of your dishes at Heroes, and one particular is a favorite of mine, is the Clipper. So what inspired that combination of turkey and bacon and mushrooms, the secret sauce? Talk a little bit about the inspiration behind that sandwich.
Okay, so I mentioned earlier that Big Kahuna's was in place there from 93 to 97, and that was one of my favorite items when I was a customer at Big Kahuna's. So we didn't start with it at the very beginning, but we said, we got to bring that one back. I was a fan of the Melds and the Clipper. They were the 2 things I would alternate get. And so we had hired some people who had a little experience working with Big Kahuna's, our first line cooks and people, and so we brought that one back just because we thought it would be popular, and it certainly has been. So full disclosure, I did not invent that item, but I have sold and consumed quite a number of them.
Yes, you have. Yep. From me, I've consumed a few of those. I'm guilty. But okay, that's really interesting. I did not know that. That's good. All right, so we got another one. You brought me a little treat. The best treat I think I've ever gotten. has been this crawfish and spinach dip that's sitting next to us. So talk about the crawfish and spinach dip. What kind of inspired you to go to have that on the menu?
So we're setting the standard now, folks.
Yes, we are.
If Chris invites you to the podcast, it's
going to be tough.
Should be common, normal procedure to bring something nice. Typically, if you're running a few minutes late, bringing some spinach and crawfish dip from Heroes usually smooths it over with the host, no matter the circumstance.
Absolutely will. Yep. So you're allowed to show up late. Just bring crawfish and spinach dip with you.
Yeah. So husbands and wives, you might want to think about that. We do prepare things to go if you need it. So that dish, we've probably had that on our menu 17, 18 years, I'm guessing. Goes way back. With a kitchen manager at the time who was a big fella. And I'm a big guy, so when I say he's a big guy, he was a big guy. As I remarked to people, he could have used the light cream cheese, but he did not. And it's as you know, it's a rich dish, but just combined a lot of the favorite things, with the cream cheese and the crawfish and the spinach being the three top items by volume in the dish. But the list of ingredients is as long as your arm. It's got everything, obviously garlic powder, Grille seasoning, and just so many. It's a tricky item. It's one of those ones where when you prepare it, you have to take the recipe book out and double check yourself because there's so many. It's one of those.
Yeah.
But the result speaks for itself, I think. It's been a very popular thing for us.
And it can easily be messed up too, I guess, right?
You don't want to try to think, I can remember that. We have some recipes in the store where they're simpler and certain wing sauces and things that are simple. There are fewer components, but that one you got to have that recipe out. It's definitely like our red beans and rice.
Yeah,
you got to go through that. The details really matter, but yeah, it's been a very popular dish, and it does travel well for to go also.
Okay. So. Yep. There's so many. I mean, we could probably spend all day talking about the dishes at Heroes. But what would you say? You've won Nappy Awards for wings and just all kind of stuff like that. What would you say though? I guess first time guests coming in for the first time. What would you recommend to them?
Sometimes I size them up and I try to identify what their appetite might be. We do a club sandwich, which is a monster. It's huge. I don't know what percent of those are fully consumed on the premises as opposed to they eat part of it and they take maybe one, it's into 4 quarters the way it's cut. And it's that double-decker classic old school club. And some will take half of it with them or some will take at least one of those for a snack later on. So it's a monster, but I will ask people, if you're hungry, if you have a big appetite and you like that sort of thing, or if you want to take part of it to go. And we get a lot of that. You've hit on a couple with the clipper and the spinach and crawfish dip. They're definitely way up there. I would say our burgers, our melt, we serve that on Texas toast, sauteed onions, American cheese. Melt. Yeah, I like that one a lot. And we use a potato roll for the burgers. It's quite good also. We do an all-American burger now, which is a little different. It's kind of a pub-style sauce. It's a little spicy. And that's a fairly recent development for us to add to that burger option. But it's hard to go wrong with a melt or, as you say, the clipper, the spinach and crawfish dip. And then the wings, over the years, we've expanded the options there. When we started, we literally had one. It was basic buffalo. Then we made a spicy one. Then we began to move into the teriyaki and the Cajun dry rub, which is very popular. So, it's grown over the years for sure. More than I originally intended, I might add.
Right, yep. How do you prepare the staff accordingly, especially on those weeks like the Senior Bowl and maybe when South Alabama's got a big football game with Troy and you got a lot of visiting fans coming in or something like that? How do you prepare for different seasons like that with your staff?
Well, I'm going to tell you, it's a great time to mention my operations manager, Richard True, who is a huge part of our operation, and he has driven our progress, if you will, in how to handle high volumes better. There was a time back in the old days where when I had one restaurant, I was always at Heroes downtown, and it would be kind of a madhouse at times. We didn't have anything to regulate the flow of customers and all that, even during Mardi Gras. So it could look lucrative, but you've got a bartender there, and you might have people 3-4 deep at the bar. Very difficult for food runners and servers to kind of navigate the area. So it looks lucrative, but honestly, we've evolved much more as a restaurant as opposed to just the bar thing. Our percentage of food sales is higher than it used to be. And Richard's got tremendous background as a local restaurant operator and experience up in New York and other places running it. So Richard has really helped drive our whole approach, and it ultimately means more bodies, more people in place, but in the right role. Food runners, hosts, different people doing to go. So we've gotten pretty good at it, and I definitely have to give Richard credit for driving that part, because when I used to drive it, it did look like a madhouse at times. So.
Yeah, just from my perspective, it does look like Richard is probably the glue to your entire business. It seems like he's a good businessman, and
he's been wonderful for the two. If I could have two right-hand people, it's Richard True, my operations director, and Jessica McGee, who has been with me 17 years. Started working in the store as a server and a bartender. Now handles. I mean, I struggle at times. At one time, I thought I came up with an appropriate title for her, and now it escapes me. But she does so much stuff that maybe the public does not see because it's not directly in the stores, but all the administrative needs. When you're talking about 3 restaurants that all sell food and alcohol, from the permitting process and the payment of all the vendors, it's payroll related. I mean, if Richard and I don't do it, it ends up in this huge mass of tasks that Jessica attacks. So we're fortunate. We would not be where we're at without Jessica McGee and Richard True. I do think back, oddly enough, there was a time neither one of them were with the organization. And in Richard's case, I have 3 locations and I was the operations manager, which to me now seems insane. I don't know what the hell I was thinking, honestly. But we've been very happy. I got to know Richard when he was the point person at True, his family's restaurant, True Midtown, on Dolphin Street. Great guy. I used to say that if the Nappy Awards, the Lanyap had an award for Mobilians Best Host, I believed all along that Richard would be that guy. We hit it off quite well, and we have complementary skill sets. I don't have many skills. He has lots of them, but they are different. He has expertise in a lot of areas that I really don't. So he's been instrumental, and Jessica, again, 17 years. I mean, she deserves the medal, you know.
That says a lot right there. I mean, just having them with you as long as they've been, and that says a lot about you as well. I want to talk about, we talked a lot about Heroes, but you didn't stop with just Heroes. 2006, you opened up your second restaurant, the Royal Scam. What was your thinking there with opening up a second restaurant and calling it the Royal Scam?
There is no cure for this, just to be clear. A friend of mine who has been in the industry sent me some quote one time. He said something like, "When there is no cure, embrace the disease." So I thought that was funny. But, I at that time had some exposure to Royal Street. Vietz was downtown. They another great Mobile institution who opened in 1998, the same year we opened Heroes. Gina Provito, Doug Provito, Kay, Lisa, the whole gang. Incredible place. And I had been dragged over there by some friends of mine, and I got to kind of know and see this area, perhaps at the beginning of something with regard to the renovations at the Renaissance Riverview, but also the construction of the Battle House. And then it wasn't long after that, the Hampton Inn construction. So I think our timing was quite good there. And certainly it had to be something radically different from Heroes. You're only a stone's throw away.
Right.
So it opened up initially as small plates, kind of a tapas style, a bar with small plates. And we had some obstacles with regard to the construction. And I'll say now to this day, I never will know how well we could have done had we simply stuck to that concept. But I had a gut feeling that the time came to pivot and broaden that menu a little bit. Now, those same small plates simply became the appetizers for the new menu when we evolved. So that Royal Scam over the years has had 3 different formats. It was small plates initially. Then we expanded the kitchen capabilities, and it became more of a full service type menu with entrees and such that did lunch and dinner 6 days a week for many years. And then with the COVID shutdown, the Heroes locations were closed for a couple of months, maybe 6 to 8 weeks, something like that. But the Royal Scam location, as you may recall, it was closed for 18 months.
That's right.
So, most people closed that long post-COVID didn't reopen.
That's right.
And we about half that time, I believed that the demand simply was not there for that. And then the other half of the time, we were committed to getting back, but we had a significant challenge where gathering staff back together to do that. Had a few key players that were actually helping us at Heroes temporarily until we reopened Royal Scam. So that timing took place, and then that's what brought Jonathan Stern, who is our chef, into the forefront in that role. Jonathan had been with us previously, but he was not in the key role. He's an important role, but not the guy driving the menu decisions and the menu development. So we bring him back. We're blessed to have a general manager named April Glass, who brought incredible energy to our team, incredible commitment. I always say that, you can't pay someone to care. Well, April's energy and enthusiasm and really love of that restaurant helped drive us to a point. And she's just recently moved on to something outside the industry, but we wouldn't be where we're at if it wasn't for her commitment, right. And nor would we be where we're at without Jonathan Stern's commitment. And then I learned to back away and let them do some things and see how it evolved, and I've been unbelievably pleased. He's changed some things. We mentioned, the crab cakes, very different, but it kind of made the cuisine and the facility evolve towards the fine dining, where now we are Tuesday through Saturday, dinner only, largely driven by reservations. We certainly take walk-ins, but we were, I would say, casual fine dining before, and now we're fine dining. Yep. You want to get a reservation if you can. Even if it's calling a couple hours in advance to make sure, obviously, we know if we're aware you're coming, we can do a much better job for you.
Yeah.
So, so we're really happy with that. And what makes it easier for me is that our new GM is also named April, and that helps me as I get into my advanced years. And April Baker, wonderful. She was on our team prior to April Glass's departure, so now she is our GM. We're very happy to have her and Jonathan in those key positions in the store.
That's been a good transition.
It's been wonderful, and it's interesting, that, again, that's the third iteration, if you will, of that restaurant. All three successful to a point, but there's something gratifying about seeing the results of the efforts these wonderful folks have made. It's really gratifying, and I think too that when you're doing fine dining, that standard is high. That standard has to be high.
Yes,
you're asking for the ticket prices higher. People have the expectations. I'm just really proud of sort of how that's developed. I don't get much credit for so much of what takes place at that facility. I guess I get some credit for hanging in there and not quitting. And sometimes that's it. So.
Talk about your thinking your process of thinking during COVID when everything, the Royal Scam was shut down, and how it's transitioned into that fine dining. I know for this podcast especially, when I ask other people that are on this, some of your favorite restaurants, I hear Noja and I hear Royal Scam and Noble South, right? I mean, that's some good company to be in when it comes to fine dining in Mobile. So how did it make the transition to that fine dining? Was that a thought process that you had with your team?
Listen, it was so interesting because that was such a strange period of time, and being closed that long gave time for a lot of reflection to think about it. And, so much uncertainty in the entire world, so much uncertainty there. What we felt like we had a great location, which could have, in theory, changed formats. And there were a lot of different thoughts about what could perform best, serve the people, but also be a viable business. What was our best option there? Certainly, when you're doing fine dining, the number of qualified staff members in the community is narrowed a little bit versus a more casual type place. So, if you ask me, did I ever consider doing something other than what we're currently doing now? Absolutely. There were a lot of thoughts. I have a friend of mine. He's always bugging me at Heroes for pizza. He's just teasing me a lot, and I let him know that there was a thought process at one time that the Royal Scam might have reopened as a place that did some really nice pizzas. Interestingly enough, Jonathan Stern has great experience with pizzas and cheeses and charcuterie and some of those things. So it was a legitimate consideration, but maybe I'm just stubborn. I thought this thing had a footing. We've had this incredible disruption. What about the next step for that? I use this phrase all the time with my managers and people, and I say evolve or dissolve. So I think that's been the challenge for every restaurant owner and many other business owners. Pre-COVID, what were you? How can you evolve and adapt from there to be a viable business still? And it doesn't necessarily have to look like what it looked like before.
Yeah.
So we evolved a lot, but it's still called the Royal Scam, and it's still, I think, great food, and I think it was before. But I think we've reached another level. But that didn't happen without a real concerted effort by those key people. But yeah, we had all sorts of thoughts, and some of them were fleeting, but it was just an interesting time. It was the time to do a lot of reflection on what you're going to do, and when the decision was made to reopen it as generally what it was before, then within that decision became the idea that we're going to elevate. Here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And we listen. Had we not had Jonathan Stern, our current chef, on our team, we may have tried to more closely duplicate what we did before, or we may have pivoted completely away from that. So we're fortunate, and
it's interesting how that works.
Staffing is everything, Chris. You know that's the truth.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think it's a great story because we lost a lot of things from COVID. We lost a lot of good restaurants and that just the disruption that came. But I think the Royal Scam is certainly one of the big success stories that came out of COVID, in my mind anyway. What is the history of that building there? I mean, it's a really, really old building. What's the history that it's been told to you?
When we went into that building, its most recent use had been an African-themed art gallery.
Okay,
so,
I remember that.
Small facility. The courtyard area expands our seating capacity, and boy, we had a group last night, so the weather's perfect time of year for courtyards and decks. It was a small place. They had fronted up the building somewhat, so they were not using the entirety of the building for a retail space. And I have to admit, they were closed, I guess, by the time we began to work with the landlord. And I'm assuming that artists would bring in stuff they would sell on consignment there, but it was small. The infrastructure of the building had not been attacked the way that we had to run a restaurant. So we gutted it completely with regard to plumbing, electrical, HVAC, all that. We had to do all that.
Okay.
It was literally, we were standing on a dirt floor inside that building at one time. Yeah.
Wow.
So I think previously, at one time, it may have been a lawyer's office. It may have been, I think, also a bail bonds place because of the proximity to where the old jail was. So there was some, and as you know from your history, Royal Street was a rather seedy place at one time. It was pool halls and bail bondsmen, and
absolutely,
it was a rough. If you speak to someone in Mobile who's over 50 or 60, and you say you've got a nice restaurant on Royal Street, they kind of look at you like you're crazy because they remember. Some of those folks remember that scene, and it was it's definitely quite different, driven by a variety of factors. Great corporate citizens like Ralph Hargrove and his organization have made a big impact down there. He's a super, super corporate citizen, that guy, and his whole group. Also the RSA, obviously. What an impact they've been on downtown Mobile. It's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy for Dr. Bronner and their team of people. They come in and they build. If you build it, they will come, and I think they've kind of shown that.
Yeah.
So the Battle House restoration, absolutely beautiful. I tell out-of-town guests, even if you're not staying there, just take a stroll down there into that lobby and check it out. And the Renaissance, the Riverview, as people in Mobile would call it, the Riverview, or the Adams Mark, if you're old.
Yeah.
And a beautiful facility. The RSA folks have done a great job with building and maintaining these real assets. And I think, honestly, our hotels downtown are one of our great assets. For some of our people who live in Mobile, they may not be aware of that, but everything, Hilton Garden Inn, the Hampton Inn, a great group there. There's just some wonderful facilities. I know they've done a major renovation over at the Admiral.
Yep.
So we're fortunate to have these. These are assets. And certainly if you're a restaurant guy, because none of those rooms have kitchens in them.
Yeah, so you're right there in the middle of all the ones you just mentioned.
Happy to be there, sure.
The star on that menu in my mind is a seafood gumbo. When I think of, must-have dishes in Mobile, your seafood gumbo with the Royal Scam it's right up there at the top of the list. So tell me about the seafood gumbo? Has it evolved since you in its all your different iterations? And tell me about that.
Yeah, so it's definitely evolved over the years. We've always made what I believe was a really, really good gumbo. It's a little different version of it now versus 5 years ago, shall we say. It's interesting. You can have a recipe, but the slightest deviation, not necessarily in terms of ingredients, but in terms of cook time and temperature and things, can make a significantly different product. And my example of that will be when the Royal Scam was closed that long, we chose to offer at Heroes locations what we called the Royal Scam Gumbo. Mm-hmm. And it was really good, and it was pretty consistent with what we had served up to that point in time at the Royal Scam. And I will use, to give some color to the conversation, since it's radio, it was kind of a peanut butter colored roux. Not real dark, really well seasoned, not overly spicy, but flavorful, great, well-rounded flavor. Shrimp and crab meat are the stars of the show there, so you want to allow that. It's a very controversial take. We do have tomatoes in ours. I know that's a big deal to people. Barbecue, coleslaw, tomatoes in gumbo, and your mama are very, everybody thinks theirs is the best, of course.
Yep.
Very controversial topics. But so we were doing, I think, a really good job. Interestingly enough, we still get requests for gumbo at Heroes based on they loved it. When we reopened at the Royal Scam, ultimately we ceased doing it at Heroes on a regular basis, although we would offer it, and we may this year again around the holidays, where you can get quarts or gallons to go and get it in the store for a while. We do have some people who are proficient at making that. But the Royal Scam Gumbo at the facility now, it's a little bit darker. So on paper, the recipe, the ingredient list is much the same, almost exactly. But Jonathan's instinct was to take it a little bit darker, a little deeper flavor, and it's wonderful. So I'm kind of happy that both exist, because if we offer it again at Heroes, at least maybe during the holidays, we would do the one that's more the peanut butter colored.
Right.
And Jonathan's is definitely a darker roux. And, look, again, I think Jonathan's strength as a chef and our approach as a restaurant is, it's just like when you see somebody singing the national anthem and they engage in what I call, vocal gymnastics. Sometimes the key in a restaurant operation for me, menu development for me, is if you're bringing in great ingredients, don't try to do too much. Don't try to engage in culinary gymnastics, I guess.
Okay.
Sometimes you can overdo, and Jonathan is a guy, his strength is his restraint. He's skilled and experienced, and he knows when to stay off, not overdo. And I think, listen, it's probably a symptom of many years of experience, and that perhaps he in his younger years, or some younger chefs, may just be inclined to push the envelope a little harder. Maybe spice levels are a good example of that, and the thickness and the distribution of sauces on fish dishes. Hey man, we bring in great fresh fish. Okay, we have multiple suppliers, so when you get our market catch, that's a fresh. It could be grouper. It's been red grouper this week is what we're doing, but typically Gulf oriented. So grouper, snapper, triple tail, which the local folks, they love triple tails, wonderful. But occasionally we'll go out of the Gulf and bring in like halibut or sea bass, which I absolutely love both of those. So while our reputation, our bones are kind of made more gearing towards the Gulf fish, halibut, I'll never complain when Jonathan does halibut or sea bass.
Yeah.
They're just wonderful dishes. We also have a redfish dish that remains on the menu as a constant. So if somebody didn't like sea bass, it's a different texture, or they wanted something Gulf oriented, then we'd have that as well for them. But,
right.
So that is a long way of saying he really drove that gumbo recipe, his instinct, and I love it. And I will get it with great frequency, just to make sure it's still good.
That's right. Just to make sure. That's good. I feel like you've created, two completely different, but impeccable dining experiences. How have you made sure that they both live up to high standards, quality standards, and then the customer service? What's been your role in that?
Well, of the very few strengths or skills that I have, I do think the one that I will acknowledge is my personal ability to see the restaurants through the eyes of the guest. And it's apparently quite easy in some cases to lose sight of that over time. And I always try to think in terms of everything from pricing. Is this a value? Using great, we're leaning towards using great ingredients. And if that means the menu price point has to be 50 cents or $1 higher on an item at Heroes or a few dollars higher at Royal Scam, I want us to be very proud of whatever we're producing. Certainly at a place like Heroes, you're going to have some items that are kind of standard fare, shall we say. And they may not be my personal favorites, but hey, the sales movement. I try to let the guests drive. Ultimately, I try to let the guests drive menu decisions. What stays and what goes. Post-COVID, we came back with a much streamlined menu, and we added items to it one by one, very carefully. Richard and I have this process where if I want to bring something and add to the menu, he'll try to talk me out of it, and when he tries to bring something to the menu, I'll try to talk him out of it. Because we've had this shared goal of keeping it streamlined and focused. It's helped us from an execution standpoint to, I think, make a better product, but also just from the challenge of staffing and training, and even from the guest perspective, I think menus can grow too large very easily.
Right.
And I think that's one area where we've had some success fighting the urge, and there are some favorite items from the old Heroes menu that we're currently not doing. I tell people when they complain about an item, I'll let them know that I took my mother's favorite sandwich off the menu. So I have to go to her house and make that for her now, because I need to go do that, because it was a hot pastrami sandwich, and we thought, well, look, based on sales, the Reuben was a much better seller. If I added that, I thought it would dilute that, and that decision-making process definitely has to do with a degree of duplication that might exist and our desire to avoid that. So it is a smaller menu, and that helps in so many ways, not excluding our ability to get people trained, ramped up quicker, both in the kitchen and the service staff. When I say there's a menu test now, it's not too lengthy because the menu itself is pretty focused. Yeah. So we believe in, show me, if you give me a 6-page menu, I kind of want to say, hey man, what are the items you're really good at? What are your best? Show me that. And I'd rather you give me a 2-page menu.
Exactly.
So, and that mindset exists at the Royal Scam to a tremendous degree, which is driven also by the logistics. The kitchen's so small.
Okay, yeah.
The storage facilities that helps create some borders for us, which are helpful. So I can honestly tell you, every menu item at the Royal Scam, there's been tremendous thought in every single one of them to do that item, how to do that, and every nuance there. So it can be a blessing to have limited storage area. It keeps you perhaps on the right path.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's something I've never thought about before. This episode is releasing October 31st, right? So we're right here at your 25th anniversary, almost to the day. What kind of stuff y'all got going on to celebrate the 25th anniversary at Heroes?
Well, I'm going to decorate my walker for the big event. I think we're going to have some balloons and some streamers on that. It's interesting. If you'd have told me at any point, even recently, that we have 25th coming up, I would tell you that it would be surrounded by incredible amounts of hoopla and celebrations specific to that day. And I think the mindset now for us, for a variety of reasons, is to steer away from that. We definitely want to acknowledge it and celebrate it, but really to think more in terms of the anniversary year, because that gives us a chance to execute on some things that we want to do. We made a commitment. We've talked about the desire and our goal of always trying to give back to the community, and there's so many wonderful local. So part of our thought process is we talked about 25 years. We're gonna commit to $25,000 worth of donations to local charities that could be engaged in things like animal rescue, which is very near and dear to my heart. We know some wonderful people, both with the city of Mobile and the county. The people that operate those shelters are wonderful. There's a group, the Friends of the Mobile Animal Shelter. There are specific rescue groups. Crew to Rescue comes to mind. They're wonderful. There's a group that operates technically out of Northwest Florida, but they rescue here, Northwest Florida Great Dane Rescue Group. And they have a guy, Tom Andrews, one of my heroes, who constantly works with it. So animal rescue is just very near and dear to me. Adopt, don't shop is a very common thing heard around our place. And a rescue animal, I always say, they know, so I love that. But
That's
also shelters that help homeless people. McKinney Place is a wonderful organization. I know a lot of other folks, some of our vendors. I know Gulf Distributing Company, another tremendous corporate citizen, if you will, for Mobile. They give back in so many ways. We want to kind of emulate that mindset, and so we're making that commitment. So that would kind of take place over a year. The Mobile Arts Council is a wonderful, what a dynamic group of ladies they have over there.
Yep.
That group is just wonderful. They're so much fun. I think they're in that role. I think they love what they do, and it certainly shows.
You can tell, that's right.
The zeal and the energy they bring to these events. We've been one of the sponsors of the Art Throwdown, which is very fun. I think from day one, it's like 9 years in now or whatever. Incredible event, big fundraiser for them. So we cater the food. It's basically our only off-site catering event we do all year. And we're just so happy to be here still, and sort of happy to know these entities that exist to better Mobile, from benefiting our homeless population, which is a challenging thing these days, to animal rescue, to the arts community. There are things. So that's kind of our commitment, rather than some big self-congratulatory event on November the 6th. It's more about, hey, let's take this year and we can maybe do more, give more, and really enjoy that. I mean, we're fortunate to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
Again, when you open up, you are not thinking how we're going to celebrate our 25th.
Right.
It's kind of wild.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what y'all are going to be doing over the next year with that.
We're very excited about it.
What do you think's next for you? I mean, looking ahead, I know it's hard to it may be hard to put yourself in those shoes, but what do you think's next for you the next few years?
Well, I don't have any specific plans for any additional facilities at this time, but I do have some locations selected and even secured which could accommodate such. If the circumstances, if everything falls together, we've got a downtown location which is currently unoccupied. We actually use part of it for our office, and we've got a location down Old Shell Road, down in the UMS area, down near Mobile Street. Mm-hmm. It used to be Pat and Didi's. Old-time Mobilians will remember Pat and Didi's, and then more recently it was Kimberly's Bar. That's a great piece of property. We'd like to, in my perfect world, we'll get a chance to develop that out, and it would not be a Heroes or a Royal Scam. It'd be perhaps somewhere between the two.
Okay.
I think that's a great location to pull people from Spring Hill and Midtown. There's so much energy at Old Shell Road and Florida Street.
Yeah, there is.
Publix is wonderful. We're a couple of blocks away from some of the commotion, and we'd be able to create some green space, much like we did in West Mobile with the playground area there. So we would definitely try to lean towards making that family friendly and have a lot of outside seating area for times of the year just like this, Chris.
Yeah.
It's beautiful out there. So that we don't have any specific plans on that, but that's kind of the inclination.
Okay.
So we'll see that what we hope is next. And really looking to continue refining what we do at both Heroes and the Royal Scam as well. It's
right.
It's definitely not a business where you can ever really say, okay, now
No.
we're done with that one. It's a constant, from staffing to menu development to, the facilities part. We've had a lot of challenges, and we've made a lot of investments in upgrading and updating the facilities. Well, when you first start, you're not thinking about that.
Yeah.
But, when your facility, when you run the risk of going from rustic to ragged, then you have to invest. And so the people that come into Heroes now downtown say, wow, it looks so different than it used to. Yeah, I mean, we over time, different rounds, and speaking of the COVID shutdown, we did our new bar at that time, the nice red sparkly bar. So we had already gutted the West Mobile location a few years prior and installed that there. I have a great friend and advisor named Melissa Horton. She's with a company in Mobile called Jesco Construction. They do incredible. They help build Hancock Whitney. They do a lot of work for Airbus. They do work for RSA. They're a major player, and we've been fortunate to get to know Melissa Horton and Trey Hard, their team. And so they've helped us do some things. I kid them that they use work at Heroes to build their resume. But they've helped and been a tremendous resource. And Melissa's a wonderful friend and advisor. She picked out the red sparkly bar, for example.
All right, so that's her inspiration.
She plays a key role, yeah. So then when the COVID thing happened, what are we going to do? We're shut down. What are we going to do? That was the time. Even though you were uncertain about things, it's very difficult to get something done in a restaurant when you're open 7 days a week.
Yep.
So we took advantage of that time. I'm proud of that. It was enjoyable, and I think maybe it just helped keep our mind off dwelling
Everything
too much
else,
on the unknown and the possible negatives here, right? We're moving forward, and so it definitely does look a lot different. It's not your father's old heroes.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. There's always something going on in these old historic buildings, too.
Oh, yeah.
These old buildings. All right, so that's good stuff. I wanted to transition to our next segment of the podcast, which is called Meat and Three. And we've gotten into the meat of the podcast, so now I've got 3 questions for you, 3 burning questions that I wanted to ask you. What is your favorite dish on the menu at Heroes or Royal Scam? Your personal favorite dish?
Okay, I'll start with Royal Scam. It's tough. Again, every dish has really planned and been planned and worked on, but maybe I should just answer what I order most regularly, and that is probably the answer, which is our market catch, which means it does rotate a little bit, and that goes back to the dishes I talked about earlier, where it could be grouper, snapper, triple tail, sea bass, whatever it is. And I mentioned Jonathan's skill and his incredible ability and his restraint, that he lets these incredible dishes shine through without, you don't need to do too much with a beautiful, fresh piece of triple tail or grouper or halibut or sea bass. So he finds a way to accentuate without overdoing it. So that is probably the thing I've ordered the most in the last year and a half. I will say recently, so we've added a ribeye, a 14-ounce prime ribeye to the menu. It's actually not on the printed menu. It's a regularly available.
Okay.
And it's incredible. Again, you don't have to do too much to prime beef, right? Be easy there. Don't feel the need to do. But so I had tried that a few times. Again, quality control, just making sure it's good. So I'd gone as I identified. I'd probably gone almost a year without trying our filet, and I got it a couple of weeks ago, and I was just blown away.
Yeah.
Jonathan's approach to that with the demi-glaze and the scallions, it's just incredible. So I would say market catch. If you made me pick one thing, that's the entree for sure.
Okay.
And the appetizers, they're also incredible. We have the tuna tartare, we have the Hanoi shrimp. It's just crab cakes again. It's just, it's hard to say one, but entree-wise, the one I've ordered the most, there's no doubt market catch is the one.
Yeah.
And I have friends of mine that'll come there. They're going to get the market catch no matter what.
Are they?
That's their thing. Yeah.
So you can't go wrong.
And the heroes, I guess, gosh, it's hard to say. I tell you what, we don't do a lot of new items. We don't win awards for menu innovation typically, but we have now a seared tuna wrap out there. We've never, 25 years later, we realized wraps might be a legitimate thing to do. We never did them in the past, never. Seared tuna, it's blackened tuna, great yellowfin tuna, lettuce, tomato, red onions, and a wasabi ranch. And that's in a nice flour tortilla. It's delicious.
Okay,
very flavorful. That's fairly new. And we will still prepare the old grilled or blackened tuna sandwich upon request, but the feedback and response to that has been great. We added 2 wraps. We did a chicken bacon ranch. No, I did not invent that combination either. But and they're both really popular. We had actually been doing the chicken bacon ranch one in West Mobile upon request for some months, so that worked out. So we added those 2 things when we did our most recent menu update. But yeah, I guess the tuna wrap now is really great product. They gotta sear it, mid-rare to medium, so it's nice and fresh and light, and it's probably my current favorite item for sure.
Okay. My second question for you is, when you're driving back and forth between USA and downtown locations, what's some of your favorite lunch spots in Mobile that you hit up?
I can't go anywhere without mentioning Chef Saki. I'm a big
Chef Saki.
People that know me know that I love sushi. In fact, all the Asian cuisines, I love all of it. We're fortunate. I'll throw a nod to Wade and his team over at the Slurp Society in the old Vaughn's location down there. Tremendous, very flavorful. Okay, that's bold flavors. I love it. But when we're talking about making that trip, and I don't get in there as often as I should because sometimes I don't time it right. But I guess a couple of weeks or so ago, I popped in for the first time in some months. And when you go to a place called Chef Saki, and the guy that's making your sushi is Chef Saki, That's your first clue. You might be in for something really good. He's just
Yep.
first off, he's an incredible gentleman and very skilled. But the product is just wonderful. I mean, he's got this simple, clear broth. It's a broth, for God's sake. You know, you can tell I love food. I get excited about. It's so simple. The only visible ingredients other than the broth itself, which I'm sure has been strained and filtered, would be the thinly sliced mushrooms and maybe a little green onion, and that's it. But it's incredible. I believe it's probably the base for his dumpling soup, which I have not tried. But I made a post on social media about going there and how I showed some pictures and bragging about how great it is, and everybody commented. Somebody said, "Oh, the dumpling soup is great." So now that's on my list.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be the same broth with some dumplings. How could that not be good? But his it's so incredible. This is what I love about a local restaurant. I hadn't been in there in months. I go in there, I order a couple big rolls, the big specialty ones, treating myself. And he stops before he prepares and says, "David, do you want the cream cheese?" Well, my little hitch with sushi is that if I can avoid cream cheese, if they have avocado, give me extra avocado and keep the cream cheese away. But this guy remembered that.
That's crazy.
Okay, I got news for you. You go to your corporate restaurants, that circumstance is never, the guy's not going to be talking to you from behind the counter. He's not going to remember. But he's just incredible. And we're that drive from West Mobile to downtown, I mean, you've got Nixon's, you've got Dewdrop,
right?
Ashland Pub, all these are incredible local
Cassidy's,
places.
yep.
Butch's just off over there. Yeah, I mean, we're fortunate, and I it's very gratifying to me to see the degree to which so many Mobilians do savor and appreciate and relish that.
Yeah.
And when they say things to me like, "This is why I go to independent places, not the chain," and I'm not, listen, if my 18-year-old kid was working at a chain restaurant, I'd be unbelievably thankful for that chain restaurant. Okay, get them off my payroll, right? But the reality is, there is something special, I believe, about the local places, and there is a place for chain places. Okay,
Yep.
I'm not trying to denigrate what they do, but boy, it does make me feel good when I hear someone say, "This is why we go here," and the personal connections and the knowledge, and that's my little local moment when you have your sushi chef and owner reminding you that, hey, sometimes you get that one, but you don't get the cream cheese you want it. Thank you.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
It made it taste even better. So that's a great place I'd mention. But listen, all those ones, Butch's, Nixon's, Ashland Pub, Dewdrop is legendary.
Yeah, they are.
Powell Hamlin is an institution in himself, and it's just incredible. So we're fortunate to have what we have, and I'm thankful that so many folks do seem to recognize that. And
Yeah.
I love that. And I think they've been pretty understanding with the fact that things are different. It's not quite the same old thing. We've had to all evolve, but one thing will never change. We have to be driven by the desire to meet the needs of these beautiful people who come in and support us and ultimately give us our jobs. So you can't turn a deaf ear to that.
Right.
And so I think that we've done a good job, and I think those places we mentioned, John Thompson I mentioned Nixon's, but of course he's got Callahan's.
So, yeah,
and he's part of the Mancy's group over there. It's incredible. This guy, he's made such a contribution. People don't know, little trivia, John is a Heroes Downtown alumni.
Okay, didn't know that.
Yeah.
All right, good stuff.
Yeah. He and I became buddies way back when he was working at, for Pete's sake, if you want to throw one to the old timers, and then at a place called Fallbacher's, and we got him to come down to Heroes. He had a regular job all the time back in those days and worked one bar shift a week on Friday night. And that's how that developed. And then so we're so happy to see his success. But what a great contribution he makes at all his places.
Yep.
Not excluding some of the best live music in Mobile at Callahan's. That little place, that little Irish pub, boy, you can see some incredible talent.
That's right.
You can tell, I savor, I relish these things about Mobile. And it's not to say that I would never go to a corporate restaurant, but boy, all these things I've mentioned are going to be probably higher on my list for those frequent visits.
That's right. You only get so many chances to go to a restaurant, so you might as well take advantage of it.
Absolutely.
My last one for you is, what would be your last meal? What would you say, if you could pick a last meal, what would it be?
Specific to a restaurant or just what kind of
food?
What
kind of food?
Believe it or not, by looking at me, you might not know this is the case, but breads and sweets are not really my thing.
Okay.
So is this like I'm going to be executed, Chris, or what's going on here?
I won't judge you too hard.
I'm going to tell you that as much as I love seafood, gumbo and red beans and rice could both be included in that. And since it's my last meal, I'm not worried about caloric intake
That's right,
or fat.
exactly.
Probably some fried chicken is going to get included at that point also. And who knows, maybe a pasta dish. I love seafood and pasta. When I cook at my house, I love to do shrimp and pasta and dishes like that. But yeah, fried chicken, red beans and rice, gumbo are probably in there.
That sounds good. All right, I like that. Last segment of the podcast is called Chris's Dishes. And this is where I talk about the best dish that I've had lately. And then I'll turn it over to you if you got a dish that you've had lately you want to share about. But mine is, I'm going to go sweet. I am going to go sweet on this one to an extent. But I went to Dropout Bakery over on St. Louis Street in the Innovation Portal. And I had the turkey and cheese croissant. And I could not believe what I had put in my mouth. That croissant was just phenomenal. I don't know what she does. I've had it on the podcast, but I don't think we ever got into the croissants. And I regret that now because, man, that croissant was fantastic. But also got the blueberry Pop-Tart that she does.
Okay.
And this is not what you're thinking of when you think of Pop-Tart. I don't know how she feels these Pop-Tarts like she does, but I'm telling you, it's incredible.
Wow.
So I couldn't recommend going to Dropout Bakery more and getting any of the croissants, but I got the turkey and cheese and the Pop-Tarts. There was a variety of flavors of Pop-Tarts that she's got that she makes. But I had the blueberry. Fantastic. Just absolutely loved it. So what was the best dish that you've had lately?
Oh, gosh. It's tough. I guess I'd probably go back to that last visit at Chef Saki's. It was so good.
Yeah.
He's got... there's like most restaurants. He also, by the way, I hear his hibachi is incredible. When I go there, I'm so focused on sushi that I can't get to. I should probably get some of that to go. That would travel. You could heat that up and have that later on and whatever. But his specialty rolls, the sort of the deluxe rolls, we're all used to the sushi menus where you have your basics. The simple, and sometimes I love those. Tuna, avocado, and rice, straightforward, or salmon, those type things. Or maybe cucumber, whatever, those type of deals. But his deluxe rolls, when I go, I'm going to treat myself. He's got one called the red ball and one called the orange ball. And that's what I got, and I think I posted about that. The orange ball is tuna on the inside, kind of a spicy tuna. I would miss if I tried to indicate all the ingredients.
Right.
But it's topped with salmon, thus the orange.
Okay.
And the sauce is kind of it's a honey glazed type thing, so there's a sort of a sweetness to that, whereas the red ball has tuna on the inside and it's topped with tuna as well. It's a spicier version of that.
Okay.
So a little sriracha, and both of those are just incredible. They're large. Somehow or another I managed.
He's also got one, the Roll Tide roll, I believe. He's a nod to his being an Alabama fan.
Yeah, he's got that, and he's a big Jag supporter, of course, right across from the university. Yep. And he does have some themes around some of those things like that. And I guess, I can't remember, it was probably 3 or 4 years ago I tried one of those red ball or orange ball. And it's hard for me to deviate from that when I go there. But yes, listen, the guy's great at what he does, and I'm kind of happy to be able to throw him a plug because he's just super.
Yeah, I'm glad you did
and a
too.
good human being as well.
Right.
Just a genuinely nice guy. And again, I think, as I was saying earlier, that I think our hotels, especially in downtown, are part of our great assets. I think people like all these owners, Chris Lee, John Thompson, Powell Hamlin, Chef Saki, all these, Roy at Butch's, I think those people are assets. I think they just, there are easier ways to make a living for some of us. Now, I don't count in that group because I have no other job skills, so I'm not counting myself. But those guys are just, and that's kind of one of the neat things about my personal journey, actually, has been to get a chance to meet those guys and get to know them. And we pick each other's brains on occasion. And I guess, we're talking about picking brains. I would be remiss if I did not mention the most incredible unpaid consultant in the history of the restaurant industry, my wonderful friend Bob Omansky from Winsel's, who I'm sure you met Bob and know him.
Yes.
Probably worked with him on the food tours. And, Wendell Quimby introduced me to Bob almost 25 years ago. Bob had a history prior to the Winsel's organization here in town with Cracker Barrel. I think that's what brought them to Mobile. He and his father-in-law and his family. Janet, his wife, is incredible. They're an incredible family.
They're some of the nicest people in Mobile.
Hunter has Taco Mama. It's a restaurant family. And Wendell Quimby introduced me to Bob Omansky 25 years ago. And Bob never knew how many times in the next 25 years I was going to call him and ask, hey, who do you use for this? Or how do you do this? Or what have y'all done for that? I owe him immeasurably. So if we ever have any success, it's guys like him that have contributed behind the scenes.
Yeah.
He's just always generous with his time and insight. He is a tremendous operator. As you know, the whole family, wonderful. The whole group. I couldn't speak more highly of a restaurant family than Bob and his whole Bob, Janet, Hunter, Clay, all of them with their restaurants in Mobile. Big contribution that is made there for sure.
You're right. Yeah, and I think it says something a lot too when people like you, and I think I've had Panini Pete say the same thing about Bob. So when people like y'all are talking about how he's a hero to y'all, that really says a lot about him.
Yeah. And after this, he's probably going to invoice me. I've got him on a blocked senders list, but I would do my best to pay it. The guy's been wonderful.
Yeah.
So.
Well, David, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today. I've really enjoyed it, and we've talked a lot of good things. And your restaurants are incredible. So thankful you came on this podcast and shared your journey with me.
Well, thank you. I appreciate getting invited. We talked and tried to work it out for such a while, and it's interesting. It did work out right around our 25th anniversary here, so it kind of worked out great. Look, I love what you're doing. Excited about the book. We'll be there at the release at the Haunted Bookstore downtown Mobile.
That's right.
It sounds incredible the way you're weaving the history of Mobile into food and restaurants exist. It's a unique approach.
Yeah.
So I think it'd make a hell of a Christmas gift for folks. And of course, your contribution now. How many years has the tour been going?
6 years now.
That's that's starting to roll on up there.
Yeah, it's been good.
The tour. So you are an important part of the scene now. That your ability and inclination to publicize and get the word out is incredible. It's helpful. The industry. It's not getting easier to operate, but partners in the industry, affiliated folks who help get the word out, it's very helpful.
That's it. And this is a small piece. I feel like the tour is such a small piece, but the podcast. Right? I mean, just little things along the way. If we can keep doing these things and promoting our food scene, promoting people like you and the restaurants that you have. I just think it would just be a win-win for all of us.
I think we've gained momentum as a restaurant scene in the city and downtown, and a lot of factors go into that. A lot of owners and operators and chefs who are willing to innovate and work at what are we going to be next and how are we going to evolve, and partners such as the B&B Bites food tour.
Right.
And this podcast and things are helpful. They get the word out.
We have to tell a story. We have to tell it. And the big reason why I wrote this book was there's not been a book really on the food history of Mobile. And for the chance for this to get into somebody's hands somewhere else around the country and say, oh man, Mobile's got a food scene just as incredible as New Orleans or Savannah or Charleston, places that they may consider going. Maybe they'll stop in Mobile and stop at some of these restaurants that are in the book. So.
And I also think the other part of that equation is some of our locals who, maybe they grew up, like I mentioned Royal Street earlier, they have a certain perception of Royal Street being a certain kind of thing, but it's quite different now.
Yeah, that's a great point, too.
And so we have folks who might live in West Mobile who don't frequent downtown as often, or maybe they went to one of my restaurants or one of these other restaurants many years ago. Well, guess what? If you had an experience that did not inspire you to come back at that time, you need to realize it can be a whole other thing. Things have evolved. So I certainly encourage everybody to get out and try different restaurants. I love to mention, when you go to a local independent, I love to tell everybody about it and spread the word on that. And it's, listen, every town has a Red Lobster and Olive Garden. And again, there's a place for those folks in the big picture equation, but it is these independent folks that we talked about kind of make Mobile unique and special. So you can tell I love it. I know you do.
Yep.
So it feels good to see that being broadcast, if you will, and published, because again, I love the idea. I welcome the out-of-town guests, but I really am enthused about folks who maybe have been a little on the sidelines in some regards, saying, you know what, I've been hearing about this roll scam place. We might need to go try that. That excites me, and
Yep.
and Heroes and all the other independents that we mentioned here. It is exciting to think there is more. There's further growth ahead. Thanks in part to guys like you. So thank you. I'm thrilled to have been here today.
Well, I appreciate it. All right. Well, thank y'all for listening to the Port City Plate podcast. And you can, of course, keep subscribing and check out some of the episodes that we've got. And we'll catch you on the next episode.